Hey guys! Today I'm going to tell you about Bali! I was in Bali for about 3 weeks and these are some things I learned along the way. As always, I'm not an expert and don't claim to be. These are just the things that I've learned while traveling, and I'm mostly a budget backpacker type of traveler, so if you're also in the same boat, this will be helpful to you. If you're more interested in seeing vlogs and actual video from Bali, I have a whole series of vlogs of my time there and everywhere that I went. So you can check those out after this if you want. First of all, Bali. It's not a country, it's an island in Indonesia. Indonesia is a huge country with many islands. Let's get into it. For a visa, I'm a US citizen, so I did not need a visa prior to getting there. It's just a visa on arrival, and for 140 countries, it's free visa on arrival. You get 30 days access into the country. There are some countries though that you need to get it beforehand or you have to pay. But 140 countries, pretty good. So check out your country, just Google that. Places to go in Bali. There are so many places. Okay, the first thing I think you might notice if you go to the most touristy destinations, the places that you hear about all the time, there's gonna obviously be tourists there. So just be prepared for that. There are a lot of places that are less touristy, so it just takes doing some research to find the places. Obviously, depending what you're looking for. Maybe you wanna go to those hotspots, that's fine too. Bali is a very beautiful, scenic country. There's tons of beaches, mountains, volcanoes. You can do trekking up on volcanoes. You can see the rice terraces, so many things. You might want to check out Lombok. It's the next island over, and off of Lombok there are the Gili Islands, which are these 3 tiny little islands with no cars or motorbikes, and they're pretty magical. I went there and I highly recommend them. But Lombok itself looks amazing, and also on the other side of Bali is Java, which has some amazing looking volcanoes and temples, and that's where Jakarta is, a huge city. So you might want to check out there as well. The only 2 cities I went to in Bali were Canggu, which is a beach town, and Ubud. I only had 3 weeks, so I could either rush and see as much as I could within 3 weeks, or I could try to just stay longer in those places. So I ended up just splitting my time, Ubud, Gili Islands, and Canggu. But there's so much more you can do. Transportation. Okay, the other reason I guess I didn't go so many places in Bali is because transportation is not that easy. For example, when you get to the airport, there's gonna be all of these people coming up to you saying like, taxi, taxi, and they're going to want to drive you wherever. And they're probably gonna tell you a price that's a lot higher than you should spend. There are metered taxis, and those are cheaper than a driver usually. The Bluebird taxis are what you want to look for. You can also hire a motorbike driver, so someone to take you on their motorbike, and that's going to be cheaper than going in a car. The transportation is difficult, not just getting from one city to another city, but just doing things within a region. So for example, in Ubud, there's a bunch of temples and the rice terraces and things that are 30 minutes driving. There are men on the streets everywhere asking to be your driver. A lot of people will do is you can hire a driver for the day or a half day, and it's a certain price. You negotiate beforehand. It's a price you pay, and they'll take you kind of wherever you want to go. That's really common. It's better if you're with other people though, so you can split the cost, because having a car is not the cheapest option. You can also hire a motorbike. That's going to be the absolute cheapest option. It's like less than $5 for a whole day. But you do have to be super careful. If you get a motorbike, just please be safe. You don't know how many people I met while I was traveling who had injuries from motorbike accidents. So just be very careful. But it's doable. There are a couple shuttle companies that go between cities within Bali, and those are cheap options as well. I never ended up taking any, so I can't really give you advice, but I have friends that took some and they recommended it. So there are local tourist offices everywhere, and if you want to go like to the Gili Islands, for example, pretty much anywhere in Bali there will be signs like fast boat to Gili, and you can buy tickets. As with anything like that where you're booking through these local tourist companies, I recommend go to a few and see what prices they have. Just kind of get a feel for the cost and ask around to other people you meet how much they've paid. The more you ask around and see what prices people tell you, the more you'll kind of have an idea of what you should pay. There is Uber in Bali. However, I feel like it's pretty frowned upon by any of the local drivers or taxi services or anything. They're hard to get kind of because for example, Uber is not allowed to pick you up at the airport. So if you you want to get an Uber from the airport, you have to walk to outside the airport. So you can do it, just know that if you do Uber, that's how it's gonna go down. Money, the currency is the rupiah. At the moment, $1 is equal to 13,393 rupiah. So quite a lot. You get used to having a lot of bills and a lot of money. And the best advice I have is to just double, triple count your zeros. You just don't want to get ripped off. Make sure you're familiar with the currency, look it over. It's also always good to know once you arrive somewhere and you're getting money out of the ATM for the first time, just to know how much to get out, because you're like, it seems like so much to get out $1 million. You're like, what? Whoa, that's a lot of money, but it's not actually that much money. ATMs are pretty much everywhere, and cash is usually the way to go wherever you are. Some places, restaurants and hotels and tours and all of that will take credit cards, but sometimes they do have a transaction fee, so just look out for that. For me, on my trip, I was there just 18 days and I spent $478 total, which broke down to $26.50 per day. So that was actually pretty good. While I was there, I felt like I was spending a lot more, but I was actually pleasantly surprised when I added it up later that it wasn't as much as I thought. In general, for Bali, I'd recommend around $30 a day is a good amount to go off of. And that's if you're a budget traveler, you're staying in hostels, and you're eating pretty cheaply, you're not going to expensive restaurants all the time. You could easily spend a lot more than that. And you could also spend less than that. So it's totally up to you, but that's a good amount to go off of if you're in the budget traveler range. For accommodations, there are hostels pretty much everywhere, or guest houses, or Airbnbs. It is kind of a place that if you're with multiple people, you can get better deals, because you could get like a whole villa from Airbnb that's really not that expensive. But if you're on your own, obviously that's not the best option, so dorms will be the way to go. I spent anywhere from $4 to $13 for dorms. They were pretty similar actually. Actually, the $4 one came with breakfast and the $13 one did not come with breakfast, so that's just the way it was. However, the $4 one ended up having bed bugs, and that was an Ubud. That was just a whole nother thing. But when I took my clothes in to get washed after that, the woman was telling me that a lot of people go in for bed bugs in Ubud. So my best thing to say would be, when you are booking accommodation, look through reviews. If any of them say bed bugs, I probably would not stay there. When you get to an accommodation, if you're worried, check the mattress, look around. Just better safe than sorry, because you don't want to bring those back home with you. But that can also happen anywhere. Don't let that scare you. There's a pretty good range of accommodations, and if you want something really nice, there's a lot of options that are really nice, but not in my price range, unfortunately. For food and drink, there are a lot of options. There are places that serve local food, they're called warings, and those are usually going to be your cheapest option. You can get things like nasi goreng, which is a fried rice that's really good. Sometimes it has the egg on top, sometimes it has like peanut sauce, and yeah, that's probably going to be your cheapest option, but it's like a nice, good filling meal if you want something cheap. I definitely recommend trying local Indonesian food. However, if you're not in the mood for that, there's so many options, kind of anything you want. If you're like vegan, if you want to just have green juices, like all of the kind of like hip, healthy foods, all of that though is going to be a lot more expensive than the local food. Just so you know, like the budget that I had, I mostly ate local food. I did not go to all those like fancy cafes all the time. If you know you're going to want to try a lot of different foods, just give yourself a little higher budget. Watch out, maybe some street food. There is a thing called Bali belly that some people get sick from food poisoning there, so just be careful. If you want to eat street food, I always recommend go during the busy times of day and go to stalls that a lot of people are going, because the more food turnover, the fresher it is. So just look out for things like that. Oh, and I will say there's news stories that have come out recently about dog meat being served in Bali. Sometimes they tell you it's dog meat, but sometimes they say it's chicken. So just something to be cautious for, especially the sauté that they sell on the beach and stuff. When I was there, I ate mostly vegetarian. They have really good vegetarian options everywhere. So if you're worried about it, go veg. A lot of the accommodations I stayed at did come with breakfast. So included in the room price, they also give you breakfast, usually omelet or a pancake. So that's always really nice. Bali is very hot and humid, so make sure you stay hydrated and drink a lot of water. However, do not drink the tap water. There will be some places, if you have a water bottle, you can fill up water and usually you might have to pay them. It's cheaper than buying bottled water and better for the environment. Or you can buy bottled water. The weather overall is pretty much hot and humid all year long. However, there is a dry season, and that would be from April till about September, October-ish. That's gonna be the least amount of rain. July and August are the busiest months of the entire year, besides kind of like Christmas time. So during that time, things are gonna be a lot more expensive, accommodation will be expensive, and things will book out much quicker. If you want to go and have like more of a relaxed, go with the flow, not pre-book everything and have things be cheaper, do not go in July and August. Go maybe like May or September or something and you'll be good. For clothing, again, you know, it's gonna be hot, so bring things that you like to wear when it's hot. But if you're going to temples, a lot of times you will have to cover up your shoulders and your knees. And actually at temples you are required to wear a sarong and a sash. If you don't have them, then you can usually borrow them there. Sometimes it might be a small fee. Or you can buy them there very cheap. There are sarongs everywhere. You will probably want to buy stuff while you're there, so leave room in your suitcase and don't overpack because you'll probably want to take stuff home. If you plan on doing activities like trekking or yoga or whatever, just make sure you bring stuff for those activities because actually some of that specialty type of clothing is more expensive there. Like I thought maybe I could get some yoga pants there and they're actually pretty expensive and more than I wanted to pay. Just know that not everything is cheap there. For activities, pretty much everything you want to do, I would always ask around at different places for prices. So for example, I wanted to do a sunrise trek to Mount Batur. From Ubud, if you walk down the street, like every other place is selling tickets to do sunrise trekking at Mount Batur. But they're not all the same and they're all probably going to tell you a slightly different price. So what I did when I knew I wanted to do it, one day kind of was like my research day. I went around to a few places and asked them what their price was. I asked if they would give me a discount. I asked if I had more people, would they give me a discount? Just kind of questions like that. And then I asked questions about the trek, like, because you want to go when it's good weather, so I asked them, what will the weather be like? And I tried to go with someone who seemed to know what they're talking about. They're nice and they give me the best price. You can decide how you want to do it, but I just recommend asking around, trying to bargain, but being respectful. On to the people. People are really friendly, super nice, smiling, happy. I never had any problems. It was totally fine. When I had drivers, the drivers were always complaining to me about the tourists. And I was like, ooh, sorry. So if anyone is rude to you, I think it's just because they deal with so many people coming to their country and not all tourists are respectful. Some of the tourists can be very disrespectful. If you have to deal with that over and over again, it becomes hard. Anyone who's fortunate enough to be able to travel there has a lot more money than most locals. Anyway, just be respectful and try to understand where other people are coming from and try to do some cultural things, learn the culture, be respectful of the culture. Most of the people there are Hindu, but there are a lot of other religious influences like Muslim and Buddhism. I have heard that the police can be kind of ruthless with tourists and will sometimes kind of make up things that maybe you'll get a ticket for, especially if you are driving a motorbike. Just be very careful. I would wear a helmet. I'd be very respectful. But I will say though that drugs are like an absolute no in Bali. There's zero tolerance for any drugs, so do not bring them in, do not have them on you. So language, there's an Indonesian language, but there's also a local Balinese language. And most people that you will talk to will speak English. However, I think it's always nice to at least try to speak in the local language just to say things like hello, goodbye, thank you. Wi-Fi and SIM cards. When I was in Bali, I did not get a SIM card because the first place I went I don't remember what the price was they told me, but it was way more than I wanted to spend and it was a lot more gigabytes than I knew I needed. It wasn't a problem not to have a SIM card. There's Wi-Fi pretty much everywhere. So that's just a quick overview about Bali. If you want to see my actual vlogs and video for my time there and different things that I did, then check out all my vlogs. And if you have any questions, put it in the comments below. I'll try to answer them. And if you have any Bali tips, put them in the comments below. I'm sure someone would love to read it. If you want to see more videos from me, then subscribe. And if you know someone else who's going to Bali, share this along. That'd be great. And give it a thumbs up if it was helpful to you. Alright guys, happy travels!